I must tell you, as soon as we started to play, like he walked in and he set up and he had his guitar and he wanted us to get him a Mesa Boogie amp, I believe. He had a certain one that he wanted, which we got. And as soon as I heard him play and just warming up, I realized I was in the presence of the greatest musician that I had ever met. This was like 5 minutes after meeting him. I absolutely understood why he was who he was and what it means to play with a musician of that caliber. You know, you're talking about a John Coltrane or a Bill Evans or a Miles Davis, you know? I mean, the top of the top. And it was so impressive because it was his whole presentation. So there was something about being with him. He looked great. You know, he wore a nice jacket and, you know, he just looked very well put together. And he spoke very well. And his guitar sounded better than any guitar I ever heard. And it was a guitar that he designed. And it was so, the tone was so mellow and rich and still had a bite to it. And the way he set the amp up, I mean, it was just stunning. And I could see in that moment what the absolute top of the field was like, and how different it was. And the people that have achieved that kind of greatness, there's a reason for it. So when we played, it was just taking off on a rocket ship, and you're just holding on, and you try to. It's funny because in that kind of situation, when you're under a lot of pressure, and all jazz musicians and all musicians will, I think, understand this. It's a combination of nervousness and relaxation, because there's nervousness in the immediacy of having to perform under those kind of conditions where you had one shot to play with the greatest guitarists in the world, essentially. And then on the other hand, you know, you have to have a relaxed feel somehow in the midst of it, because if it's just nervousness, then that will read. One of the things I've learned from years of performing, generally, nervousness does not read into the camera, which is an interesting thing. So I've done a lot of things where I was nervous, and a lot of things where I wasn't nervous. But as long as you're projecting a positivity and you're trying to kind of relax with the situation, and also trying to find your positive core, I found that the nervousness doesn't come across so much, which is good. So the actual performing was just amazing. I mean, he was just so, I had dreamed about it for so long, and we were so synced up when we played. And hearing him play these lines of his, everyone was just nailed, and the tone was beautiful, and it was creative, and he was balancing his solos. He balanced different elements of soloing just right. And then we had a chance to play contrapuntal lines where we're both improvising together in lean years. And I really was dreaming about that for years, because I really wanted to experience what that would feel like to co-create improvisation with Pat. And man, it just came off great. I mean, I was really thrilled with it. It was this thing that all jazz musicians know. This is the nature of our art, is that you have to sometimes throw yourself into a high level situation and just go for it. And it's one of the exciting parts of doing what we do. And you never know how it's going to turn out. And it's just, that you have to do it sometimes. It's just the nature of playing jazz. In classical, I suppose it's not so much that, because if you're going to be playing a concerto with the New York Philharmonic, you're going to have rehearsals. But in jazz, often jazz musicians are literally thrown into situations where you don't have rehearsal and you just have to rely on the moment and all of the lifetime, the practice that you've done to prepare for that. And that's what this situation was like. But I mean, the actual playing was comfortable with him, and he was very relaxed. He even told me during this, and I guess he saw that I was nervous. I had to interview him, and I didn't know the film crew. I mean, it was just one of these days. He said to me on this occasion, "This is a very relaxed situation for me." So that was good in a way, uh, and that shows you who he was. But he was just so gracious, man. He answered whatever questions he felt like answering, and he went off on his own thing for a lot of time, and he talked a lot about the guitar. And I think I have a master class that I made that I guess you could include some of this if you like, where he really gives a treatise on his view of guitar playing and how to imagine that and how to see the instrument he had his own way of seeing the instrument, which he could explain to you in minute detail. That would basically, you would have to understand quantum physics to understand it.
1, 2, 3.
I asked him kind of what his general philosophy was of playing. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, precision. He said when he was practicing as a kid growing up, he used to practice 14 hours at a stretch. And he said he would just work on trying to copy, transcribe, and play along with like a Wes Montgomery solo. And he would do it for 14 hours, he said, until every single nuance was like perfect. And he said his parents would inevitably find him in the kitchen, sleeping, slumping over the guitar. And he said his hallmark and his byword was precision. And you can hear that, man. And that made a big impression on me. You can, as a musician, you can focus on the element of precision as a separate thing. Like there's so much to learn and practice when you're in the jazz, field, but you can abstract the principle of precision and just concentrate on that. And I felt that that's what Pat had done for his lifetime, among other things, of course. And that was a real inspiration to extract the concept of precision and then to try to work on that in your practicing. So, and then he went on and showed us ways he would compose music using notes of the alphabets and letters and the I Ching. A lot of had to do with the I Ching, and all this kind of stuff. It was just out there, man. But he was so gracious and so tremendously warm and forthcoming, and we just had a great day. And I've heard this from almost everybody that I speak to that has spent any time with Pat. So here we have a guy who's the very cream of human possibility as a creative artist, who's also a fantastic person, who's warm and giving, and nobody can forget him who met him. So you gotta take your hat off to that man.